Okay, Kevin. Well, we thought it'd be useful to carry on from the discussion we've just had when we're talking about values and what's important to us, and share a little bit more information about the basic human needs, the categorization that we've come across that we found very useful. So perhaps we could just talk that through in a few minutes, just so that people get the gist of those needs and how that fits into their lives, really.
Yeah, absolutely. As another tea time chat.
It is another tea time chat.
Yeah. So I guess over the years, you and I have noticed that the number of times we've worked with particularly coaches and clients and groups of people in terms of we've noticed particular patterns and trends in their values. Yeah. So there's always lots of things that come up on a regular basis, I guess.
Yeah, it's like we obviously put a lot of energy into helping people identify their own very personal ones. In addition to that, there are trends across the general population that seem to be relevant, or even that the some of personal values chunk under in a way. And we came across this set and they seem to fit that very well.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of people done a lot of research into, what are the kind of most common things that are important to people. And the one that we particularly liked and want to share today is the set that is attributed to Tony Robbins, which he calls the 6 human needs. I think to give it its more specific title, it's the 6 human psychological needs. We might touch on the difference as we go through. So should we just kind of share them here?
Let's share the 6.
Okay, let's do that.
So these are the 6 psychological needs that need to be met for well-being, according to Anthony. And they sort of can be grouped in pairs. We've got the certainty and variety, significance and connection or love, and then growth and contribution.
Yeah, so if we think about that first pairing first of all, and these can be thought of in some ways an opposite. So some people have a great need for certainty, to know what is happening in their life now, what has happened in the past maybe, and what is happening in the future. And I guess if we're thinking about this in the context of challenging times, whatever that might mean, maybe there is a lot less certainty around currently, and or perhaps a greater need for that at the moment.
Yes, and I suppose on the contrary, then you might say there's a lot of variety around when the circumstances around you are more uncertain. But some people actually have that drive and need for variety, and doing something different. They'll be open to changes, much more comfortable with change. The people looking for stability and certainty, perhaps quite uncomfortable with things changing around them, or a pace of change that's fast. Whereas someone who needs variety, they might feel that they're stagnating if things aren't moving forward, changing, altering. And they might really find a pull towards that to satisfy that need.
Yeah. And ironically, I suppose, as we're doing this in a time of lockdown, 2020, and we may be looking at this in 10 years' time, wondering what on earth that was all about. But maybe there are less opportunities to get that variety at the moment, because obviously people, in some cases, have not been able to go out, certainly can't go on traveling, etc., etc. And yet, for some people, because routines have been altered, changed, there is more variety, being at home, homeschooling, all of those kind of things. So,
and even across the course of that 3 months or however long it might end up being, there's been that change in the emphasis of certainty or uncertainty across that period of time, it has changed quite a lot. So it's a fascinating combination of the two, really.
I think a great example for me of these needs is when I think about my pal who who I've sometimes been on holiday with, and when we come to talk about the holiday and plan it, and when we come to experience it, he has a need for a high degree of certainty in terms of exactly where we're staying, pretty much what's happening every day.
Yes.
I have less. So I need some of that,
Yeah.
but I'm quite happy to be a little bit more spontaneous, if you like,
Yeah.
a bit more flexible in that respect.
And I just thinking about in the arena of leadership as well. Sometimes we find working with chief executive officers and senior managers that they've got a natural affinity with variety and change and looking for new and progression. And sometimes they're leading organizations where many of the individuals within that organization are less excited by that. And it's always useful to remember that balance, that you might have one need yourself, but when you're communicating with others, it can obviously be something different. And to just bear that in mind, because it can be quite a strong entrepreneurial drive sometimes. I suppose at an extreme, perhaps it's an entrepreneur, however you say that word.
Yeah. And I think particularly for people who are new into a CEO role, they may feel a driver to make their mark, to make changes. So that's something just to be aware of.
Yeah, and be appreciative of all the loyalty that's been there with the certainty in times gone past, perhaps. Yeah. So the next set here really are significance and connection love. And significance is quite an interesting one. And for all of these, how they're actually lived out or satisfied will vary from person to person, of course, won't it? But significance for some people might be the respect of other people. It might be even owning material things, the car with with a nice badge on, a property in a certain place. It could be significance in terms of being important and being seen as important to someone else.
Status.
Yes, status. Sometimes, and the interesting pairing of these two, there's a question that if personal significance is very high on the needs scale, then the connection can lose out a little bit, because connection is about other people and working with them and connecting with them. So sometimes significance can tip that balance, like I want to be respected and I need this and I need something to give me that sense of being significant. And occasionally that can tilt the balance as an opposite almost to the connection and love.
And what I'm also thinking about here is the fantastic session that we do from Michael Grinder's work on cats and dogs.
Yes.
Which is looking about different styles of leadership, and the key driver behind those. One is about wanting respect, and the other one is about wanting
approachability.
Yeah, approachability and
credibility and approachability.
So one is about being respected, the other one's about being liked.
Yeah, no, that's a great split, isn't it? So on the significant side, wanting to be respected and not just respected. I'm trying to watch this and appreciated, and on the love and connection side, being liked, and the behaviour tends to be perceived as approachable. That goes with that one. Yeah.
And I think that again is a challenge for managers, particularly if you've worked in the organisation for some time, the same organisation with the same people. There is sometimes a feeling that you still want to be liked. That's a key driver for people.
And I don't know if you, Kevin, I don't think you implied it there, but often people who are promoted from within. So you're working with your colleagues, your social friends. Yeah. And then you're promoted. That adds a different sort of dynamic again, doesn't it, to bear in mind in terms of the likableness or the importance of likableness amongst all the other things that you're doing at that time.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And I guess the other difference, just to pick out there, is significance is primarily about the focus on the self,
Mhm.
and the connection is often about focusing on others and one's relationship to others as well.
Mm. And again, there's a nice mapping across perhaps to the meta programs that we talk about sometime, but that's probably for another occasion, isn't it?
Yeah,
And those top four then, the way Anthony Robbins describes them, they're the ones for, you know, well-being. You know, every human needs those top
psychological
four.
well-being. Yeah,
Everyone needs those four, but the final two, they're for spiritual growth. They're for
yeah.
roundedness and growth. So they're an additional sort of, they're the topping on the cake, as it were, for growth and contribution.
And sometimes self-actualization, for just whizzing ahead here for a second. Some people watching this now will be familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So, you know, what we're talking about here with these 6 human needs is fitting into those top 3, really, bandings. Once the physiological and safety needs have been met, these are the psychological needs that we need. And what we're saying there is that bottom pairing is about self-actualization. Yeah.
Yeah.
So growth and contribution. So you know, growth, learning, developing as a person, as a whole person, not just as a within the role.
Yeah.
And again, that's very much, I suppose, the self-focus to a large degree. The other one, the contribution, is about you know, what can you give? What can you give to others, to other systems, other communities, for example?
Something other than yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Communities, organisation, colleagues, whatever it happens to be in that contribution.
So
Yeah, and they do have a sense of being sort of a higher level in terms of.
Yeah. So I think they're a useful set to think about, to keep in mind. Ways in which you can use them. Well, I think you can think about yourself in relation to these, whether it be in challenging times or any other times. You can begin to think about to what degree do I feel these are being satisfied currently? If not, what can I do about it? You might also think about what would my evidence criteria be for these being satisfied. So significance, for example, what do I need to feel significant?
Yes. I think that's very powerful, just as we do it with all the other values elicitation. That would be a really valuable thing to do. And I think over and above using them as your own sort of benchmark for how you're feeling as well, because of course you can rate them to what extent each of these are being fulfilled. And if I'm off tune one day or not feeling quite right, just referring back to them and saying, oh, what's missing for me? I think equally important, because they are human needs, you know, in terms of building a high performing team. A leader wants to be, or a high performing family, or a loving, caring family. You know, you want to be, it's like a holistic consideration for what you can do in your life, your behaviors, your pastimes and everything to satisfy these, so that you have got that holistic, aligned and congruent sense of being, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
So hopefully that's another bit of food for thought.
Yeah, and also just the final thought for me is you may think about some of the things that you have listed as your values. You may see them coming under these headings.
An interesting little exercise to see if they just group like we were getting the sense of. Excellent. Okay, well, that's it for now.
Okay, fabulous.
Bye. Happy coffee.